idea. So that's why this is so important for us as an Army, because this is how we build our Army. So we wrote a new Army operating concept, and we published it a couple of weeks ago at AUSA conference. And if you could put it up. It's a bill, should be right to the right. Okay. Unified land operations is our concept. Win in a complex world. Now, a couple of things should jump out at you. If there are any former naval officers in the crowd, you'll notice the picture on the right is colored. The one on the left is black and white. I say that being a proud graduate of the United States Navy War College as well. That is more than a slick marketing ploy. It is a slick marketing ploy. What is more to it than that? Because it denotes some distinct differences, although the intellectual process we went through was exactly the same, because again, life is all about metrics. So I said, I'm not going to change the process that has built and driven the Army for 50 years and given you, the American people, the most powerful land army the world has ever known. So the first thing we have to do is describe the future. Well, so we have our problem statement there, win in a complex world. What we're saying, the future I'm describing as complex. Then I define complex, if you read it. Complex means a world that is unknown, unknowable, and constantly changing. Unknown, unknowable, that's important, and constantly changing. I said it's similar to the Heisenberg principle. You know, the fact of measuring something in and of itself changes it. I think that's the same thing with the future. The fact of knowing something about the future, the fact that you know something about it, pretty much changes it and makes sure that's not going to happen. Why? Because we're the United States, we're the Army, we're 8 kind of people. If we know something about it, we're going to do something about it. And if we do something about it, it probably is not going to happen. We knew a lot about the Soviet Union. So what did we do? We wrote Air Land Battle. We built the Big Five. We did all that. Did we ever fight on the Central Plains of Europe? So actually, the future that we tried to predict never came to. So it kind of reinforces my point that the future actually is unknown and unknowable, and it constantly changes. So I told you Air Land Battle was written to deal with the known. The future that we are writing this for is to deal exquisitely with the unknown. Now people say, well, Dave, that's just a cop-out. You're just lazy. You can't figure it out. I said, no, it's very important to come to grips with that you're dealing with the unknown. You know why? You buy different kind of weapons. You train people differently. You build different kind of organizations. You do things very, very differently if you have come to grips with the fact that you are constantly going to be working in an unknown world that constantly changes. Versus if you think you can predict the future, because if you think you can know the future, what you spend all your time is in grasp of finer and finer details of information of what you think you know are going to happen. Versus if you come to grips with the fact that you don't know the future and cannot know the future, you develop a capability to adapt and innovate constantly. So it's not just a cop-out to come to grips with the fact that the future is unknown. It is a very critical intellectual concept to actually nail down, because now you build a different army. And I'll talk to you about it. Not only do you build it, but you acquire it and maintain it. Kind of everything trade-off does. You design it differently, you acquire it differently, and you maintain it differently than an army that is built to deal with the known. So that's the first question we said. Complex world, unknown. This question comes up a lot since I'm supposed to be the future guy of the Army. I go to forums and everything, and people say, hey, future guy, tell me the future. Predict the future, and I get that. I was at a forum recently with a very distinguished Air Force general officer, a very distinguished Navy admiral, and I was the token land guy. And they said, hey, we want to talk about what your service is doing in the future. And what they were really saying is predict the future. Predict the future, and what are you going to do? So they talked to the Air Force gentlemen. And again, by the way, none of this works from an Army point of view unless the United States Air Force always maintains air supremacy wherever they are. Wherever I am on the ground, I want to have air supremacy around me, okay? This does not work unless the United States Navy is uncontested anywhere in the world and maintains naval supremacy everywhere it can. This concept will not work for the Army unless the United States Marine Corps are the very best naval infantrymen in the world and are uncontested. So this is not a power grab, this is not a land grab. This is saying we are part of a joint force, and the Army part doesn't work unless the Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard are without peer in the world. So I'm saying, you guys do your part. You've got to be the best of what you are. I don't want to take anything away from you, and then I'll be part of the joint force as well. So we had this joint panel, and again, we're talking about the future, and again, what they really say is predict the future. And so the Air Force general says, and the Air Force has great technology, and we're going to have this, and unmanned this, and space this, and stealth that, and all these kind of things, very impressive. And they get the Navy Admiral, again, first of all, has a very impressive white uniform with gold everywhere, so it's just very imposing as it is. And we're going to have littoral this, and stealth ships, and underwater this, and unmanned this, and everything. And again, very impressive. And they obviously were masters of their domain, which I was very happy. It was very reassuring to hear that the Air Force and Navy had a vision. And then it got to me, and in a previous life, I had sort of done the spokesperson kind of thing, so I've had media training and all that. And what they always say, you know, a safety valve always, if you get asked a hard question you don't want to answer, you just answer it with another question. You've probably seen that here in this city from time to time. So they get asked, okay, land guy, tell me the future, what's the Army going to do about kind of predict the future? And they say, we want you to go 50 years from now. I know it's kind of hard for you Army guys, you kind of think max effective range of a bayonet, etc. I want you to push out 50 years. So I kind of sit there, I said, I would categorize this as a hard question. So, go back to, fight as you train. Okay, return it with a question. I said, is this really the best question to ask? I said, but let's think about that now, because you're asking me to predict the future. I said, what if I was here 50 years, because as you see this whole thing, I'm adverse to predicting the future. I said, what if I was here 50 years ago? What if I was here 50 years ago, and you asked me, basically, Army guy, that's how I'm referred to officially usually, predict the future. I said, so let me tell you how I would answer that. So if I was here 50 years ago, and you asked me to predict the future, I would say, okay, now remember, 50 years ago, the World Trade Center wasn't even built. I said, what's going to happen, I don't know, 10 or 20 years from now, is we're going to build 2 really tall buildings on the southern tip of Manhattan, and those buildings will become the center of the world financial activity. They probably would have said, well, wait a minute, why is this guy talking about 2 buildings in Manhattan? What is he, like a Corps of Engineer guy or something? But let him go on. So I said, so we're going to build these really 2 tall buildings. They don't exist yet, but we're going to build them on the southern tip of Manhattan. And then, like, I don't know, 20 years after that, the United States is going to undergo an attack on the continental United States, an attack of which the consequence will be more loss of life than at Pearl Harbor. And one of the results of this attack will not only be more people killed in Pearl Harbor, but those 2 really tall buildings that don't exist yet, that I told you we're going to build, they're going to come crumbling down. I'm sure they would say, what is this guy's infatuation with these 2 tall buildings? We build them, they come down, whatever. And I could see probably the first question will be, so Army guy, what you're saying is the continental United States, you're saying like 30 years from now? This would have probably been, height of the Cold War, Vietnam probably at that point. Somebody's going to attack the continental United States and cause more casualties than Pearl Harbor. Like 30 years from now, they're probably saying like, well, what weapon is the enemy armed with? Is it like, directed energy beams, neutron bombs? What was the assailants that attacked the United States, what were the assailants armed with? I'm going to say, well, box cutters. Box cutters? Army guy, that's the best you can do. 30 years from now, the weapon of choice of our adversaries is going to be box cutters. I say, yeah, that's it. They're not even going to be the newest version either. They're non-stealth. They would say, well, I'm sure there was some kind of global command and control network, space-based, probably a submersed part of it in the ocean that was probably vectoring in these tens of thousands, maybe millions of box-cutting wielding assailants to cause mayhem, thousands of Americans dead. I can't imagine how many people with box cutters that takes. And there's going to be a huge way to command and control them and all that, to to get them to the United States. So what was the command and control mechanism, this global command and control mechanism? I said, well, it'll be a radicalized guy in a cave in Afghanistan. They'll say, a radicalized guy in a cave in Afghanistan gets some folks with box cutters to cause more deaths than Pearl Harbor? That's your vision of the future? That's the best you can do? I said, yeah. And they say, okay, smart Army guy, what is the United States of America going to do about a radicalized guy in a cave in Afghanistan that was able to vector in all these box-cutting, wielding assailants? I'm like, so what are we going to do about this guy in a cave in Afghanistan? I said, it's obvious we're going to invade Iraq.